everyone. A very, very good evening, everyone. And we are delighted to have you here. And we hope this session brings value to your career. We have some amazing insights and engaging Q&A at the end. So be ready with all the questions you have, and we'll try to pick them all in the Q&A. You can just type in the chat box. We'll pick it all, and we'll try to discuss the pointers shared by you in at the end for sure. Our team is at the back end. We'll pick out the best questions and we'll ask with our speaker. Fine. So tonight we are honored to have Madhumita with us. She is talent partner technology at Airbnb, joining us with a wealth of experience spanning various aspects of HR and employee life cycle. Madhumita brings invaluable expertise to the table. In her role as talent partner at Airbnb, she spearheads people's strategy for technology teams across the globe. So, welcome, Madhumita.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Great. So, before we start the session, I would like you guys to know about our Remote Revolution initiative. So, at Uplers, our mission is to make hiring and getting hired reliable, simple, and fast. And therefore, Remote Revolution is an initiative wherein we invite speakers from top notch companies like Twilio, GitLab, Atlassian, and now Airbnb, and many more to share their insights on how these remote companies hire, their process, culture, interview tips, and remote readiness traits required by top global brands. For the people who have missed our season one, you can definitely check it out on our YouTube. And this session will be definitely helpful for you guys for your upskilling and for you to get a good opportunities in a good remote brand. So, moving forward to the session agenda. Yes. So Madhumita will talk us about her journey. She'll take us through her insights into her role. She'll talk about unique culture that shapes Airbnb and her experience working with a remote team. Following that, we'll explore the intricate hiring process at Airbnb. We'll address the critical questions: what skills does it take to not only succeed at Airbnb, but also to stand out during the selection process at any global brand. So, welcome, Madhumita. Without much ado, let's dive into the session. To start with, tell us something about your career journey, your role at Airbnb, etc.
Sure. Thank you, Divya. Thank you. And thanks to Uplers for having me here. And to all of you who've joined, I know it's pretty late for all of you in India. I'm here in California. It's early morning for me, but I know it's late for all of you. So thank you for joining. So yes, about myself, I have about 15 years of experience across various gamuts of HR. I started my HR career with recruiting and then moved into all the other areas of HR like performance management, compensation planning, HR strategy. So today I lead the people strategy for a couple of technology teams at Airbnb across North America, EMEA, and APAC. And as I mentioned before, my first experience right out of undergrad started with executive search. It was rather a very interesting experience for someone who was just out of undergrad, because executive search is all about hiring at the executive level. So typically, these are roles with 20, 25 plus years of experience in the industry. And there I was, as someone fresh out of undergrad, interacting with people who are much, much more senior in the industry and actually helping them navigate through their career paths. But what that strangely helped me with was, and as I look back retrospectively, is that it really helped me build my executive communication skills. Because as an HR business partner and a talent partner, you are essentially interacting with the directors and VPs of the organizations that you support. So there is a level of communication that you need to bring to the table. There is a level of leadership that you need to bring to the table to build that credibility with your leaders, so that they truly think of you as a thought partner when it comes to HR and their business. So that experience really helped me upskill myself as a good HR business partner. So I, for the most part, have been in the big tech. Before Airbnb, I was with Visa Inc., where I was a talent partner for the cybersecurity organization, which grew from 300 people when I started to almost 600. We expanded our teams in India, and I was part of building out that team in India when Visa decided to set up their office in Bangalore. So with that said, outside of my HR role, I do a couple of things. I serve on the board of nonprofits. Education is one space that I'm very passionate about. Here in the US, I serve on the board of a nonprofit that helps immigrant children get the right kind of mentoring for to make career choices. And then I also I used to host a podcast, not anymore, but I used to host a podcast where I brought in guests with interesting career stories, and that formed as an inspiration. And my hope through the podcast was that forms an inspiration for others to explore different kinds of career paths. And outside of all of this, when I find time, I collaborate with musicians and I compose my own music. So those are some extra things that sort of keeps me going outside of my HR role. When it comes to one thing that I strongly believe in is about how careers have changed in the last, especially in the last decade or so. Because if you go back and look at what our parents did, they probably joined an organization and then stuck to it for decades. And when they had one career path, they just pursued it, right? It was a very linear way of pursuing careers. But since the internet revolution and social media revolution and whatnot, there is so much access to information that's out there. So we are actually, our generation and our future generations are kind of in this fortunate space where with this access to information, we no longer have to settle ourselves to just one path. We can keep moving to different paths. We can, today I'm in HR, but ask me 5 years down the line, I may not be in HR. I don't know. So I think there's almost that power in actually not knowing what you will do next because there are so many options out there. So my fundamental belief is that careers are no longer structured. It's becoming more and more fluid, where you could have multiple career paths, you could have parallel career paths. So I think from a career standpoint, it's a very exciting time to be in.
Great, great. Yeah, so true. And awesome. Thank you so much, Madhumita, for sharing your inspiring journey with us. I'm sure our participants for the session today would love to have your insights on various aspects like hiring process, jobs, etc. Anyways, coming back to our agenda, first thing first, one of the first things that anybody would want to know before applying for a job at any organization is to know about the company. So if you move to the next slide, which talks about company. So, knowing about the company is very, very important because people apply before applying at any organization for a job. It's overall standing in the market, its culture, etc. should be known to the participant, like to the particular person, right? So I think you are here with us, and of course, we all know about Airbnb, but you'll be the best person to tell us more about it.
Yeah, sure. There's so much I can tell about this organization. So in this slide, I have some fun facts, and I'm hoping to make this a little more interactive. So before I dive into the facts, a little bit of history about Airbnb. So Airbnb started in 2008. It was started by three friends in New York. And what really triggered the three friends to start was there was a design conference that was happening in New York in 2008. And these three friends wanted to participate in the design conference, but then they also realized that people who were coming from outside the state to participate in that design conference, they just couldn't find places to stay, right? Because all hotels were booked, everything was booked. And then they found that people were struggling to find places to stay just for 2 nights, right? Just for 2 nights to attend the conference and go back. And that's really when this idea struck these friends, saying, okay, why don't we host some people, right? So for the very first time, they actually literally just got an air bed and just got some cereals, right? That is really where the air bed and breakfast comes, and that's what turned to be Airbnb. So they literally rented like an air bed and then had some cereals and milk, and then they ended up inviting two strangers who had come to the design conference to stay with them, right? And then they realized that that was an opportunity, because they got to see that strangers could at the end of the day become friends. In fact, funnily enough, if you ever get to visit our San Francisco headquarters, we actually have this story sort of lined up in our wall of how Airbnb started. And these two people are still friends with our CEO, right? Because they were like the very, very first guest that the CEO ever hosted in the concept of Airbnb. So the interesting thing is what, it's a very simple idea of let's just host somebody and see where it goes. But what the idea ultimately was trying to solve for is very complex, because we are all very familiar with this. And I myself, growing up in India, was always cautioned about, oh, stranger equal to danger, right? If they're strangers, like, be careful. But then what Airbnb has tried to do through their design is to challenge that notion that strangers need not be equal to danger. If you have the right precautions and right guardrails in place, strangers can also become friends, or friends in the sense that good acquaintances, right? So that's a very fundamental story of what Airbnb was trying to do through their design. They want to challenge the notion that stranger is not equal to danger. So that's just a little bit about how it all started. And as we go through other slides, I can share some other stories about Airbnb. So with that context, here's some fun facts here. We are now 15 years old, right? We started off in 2008. So, if you all want to just put some numbers in the chat, how many active listings worldwide do you think we have? And just feel free to put whatever number comes to your mind in the chat. Okay, 100,000, 200K. I saw 1 million. Okay, 50K. Wow, it's a wide range from 100,000 to okay, 300 million there. Okay. All right, we can go ahead and, oh, you think, okay, Divya, you think I can control the slides? I can go ahead and, okay, thank you. So we have 7.7 million active listings worldwide. This is worthwhile noticing because I don't know how many of you all remember the pandemic, but the pandemic was a very defining moment for us as a company, because in 2020, when the world shut down, travel was shut down, and we were primarily relying on international travel as a company prior to the pandemic. 90% of our revenues came down in 2020, right? We hit the bottom rock, if I could call that. And many of us inside the company honestly didn't even know we would survive 2020. We were like, nobody will be surprised if we shut down, because there were no revenues coming in. We were like, guests were canceling worldwide, right? Our revenues hit the rock bottom in like the 10 year of history or 12 years of history that we had as a company. So the 7.7 million plus that you're seeing, there's almost been, I would say about 30% of the 7.7 million actually came to us after the pandemic, because only after the pandemic, we started to focus on, local cities, local towns. So today you can pretty much find Airbnb in even smaller towns in many parts of the world, which actually did not exist before 2020. Okay, next fun fact. Number of cities or towns where you think we have active listings. Again, throw a number in the chat. 1,000. Okay, 4,000. Okay, I feel like I'm playing a roulette or something in a casino. Everybody's like throwing numbers. Over 10,000. Okay, let's go ahead and reveal the right answer. 100K plus. We are in 100K plus cities or towns that have active listings. Okay, let's keep moving. Next fun fact. How many guest arrivals do you think we've had till date? 5 billion. Okay, 200,000. Okay. 50 million. Okay. 1 billion. Okay. Everybody's talking in millions. Okay, let's see. Let's reveal the answer. 1.5 billion plus. Okay, next one. Number of hosts that we have in our platform. I hope you're keeping a track on how close you are to all the guesses so that you can give yourself a gift at the end of all of this. 50K over 5 million, okay. 4 million, 10 lakhs. Okay, let's reveal the answer. 5 million plus. Now, there's a little bit of a thing that I want to call out here. So Airbnb has so many competitors, right? And even in India, there's Cleartrip, there's Oyo, there's so many. And especially if you look at the Indian market, travel as a lifestyle choice is still a pretty new trend, right? It's probably a couple of years old. I would say probably from 2015 is probably when we saw the trend of travel is not a luxury anymore. It's a lifestyle choice, right? So if you look at what Airbnb does as a very simple two-sided platform, on one side, there are hosts who want to give their place for someone else to stay. On the other side, there are guests who want to stay. And it's a matchmaking platform. At a very, very simple level, there's nothing revolutionary about the idea itself. It's a two-sided platform. But what I think makes Airbnb unique is the investment outside of the platform that we've put in our host community. So, which I don't think there are many other brands that can actually say the amount of investment and the amount of touch points that the CEO of a company would have to different host communities that exist in every single city or a town or a region or however you want to look at. So some of the unique things that we've done when it comes to our host community is post the pandemic, for the first time, we introduced a host advisory board. Just like how a company would have a board, our host community actually has an advisory board that is a representation of the host, right? So they act as the voice for us to say, this is what the hosts want. Because for us, Airbnb as a platform would not exist if our hosts do not exist, because they are the ones who are actually giving us the supply to the platform itself. So something that's very unique to what we do in Airbnb is really look at our hosts as our partners, and they are not just part of the platform. So that's one thing to just have a context there. Okay, last 3 fun facts. How many dollars do you think our hosts have been able to earn by through our platform year to date? $13,800. I don't know if you mean that in rupees or dollars, but I will assume dollars. Okay. 12 is that TR? Is that trillion? Okay. 15,000. Okay. Okay, let's reveal the answer. 250 billion plus, right? So for a lot of our hosts, being an Airbnb host is also a primary source of income. And it helps them pay their mortgages in some cases. So it is a true income generating thing for many of our hosts. Okay, next one. We also collect taxes. So here's what I want to also call out. So it's not like as a platform, we just say, hey, hosts, you get money from, all these guests that are paying for your place, and then you are responsible to pay, for your own taxes. What Airbnb also does is it helps hosts understand what might be their tax implications. So if it means that, Airbnb has to withhold taxes for hosts so that when the tax filing season comes, a host doesn't have to pay exorbitant amount of taxes. Airbnb also helps with, giving them guidance on how they should be thinking about their tax implications as well. Because any host that gets these, money that's paid by the guest, those are all taxable income for them. So Airbnb also helps the host with those tax implications. So let's actually keep moving quickly here so we can reveal the number. 7 billion plus is the amount, is billion plus dollars is the total taxes that we've been able to collect and remit. This means that Airbnb has the responsibility to governments to ensure that taxes are paid, because we, at the end of the day, we don't want, Airbnb to be seen as an excuse that hosts just keep making money but they don't pay the taxes, because that's not responsible. So we take that responsibility as well. Last fun fact, countries with active listing, we'll go ahead and reveal the number just in the interest of time, 220 plus. Yeah, so with all that said, I can share a little bit more about our culture. Divya, can I keep moving?
Yeah, I think we have this slide title which mentions who are we, which is like values and things.
Yeah. So with the fun facts, the fun fact is what have we been achieved, right? Who are we is how have we been able to achieve what we've achieved. So we have these four things that we call as our core values: champion the mission, be a host, embrace the adventure, be a serial entrepreneur. So in this, as you think about champion the mission, our mission is to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. It's a very aspiring mission, and it's not something that's easily achievable, because with so much of um, you know across the world, whether it's India, US, Europe, you call any other nation, there is a lot of political divide today that's happening, right? Like there are always people on extreme sides of opinions, and there are always people who don't feel like they don't belong in a place. And here we are trying to create a platform where when somebody comes to a new place, or when somebody comes to someone's home for the first time, it's really about feeling like I belong here, I can live here. So that's the kind of experience that we are looking to create. And be a host is something that, in fact, that's a value that is so intertwined with our language. We use it all the time, internally at Airbnb. It's just become so much part of our language about how to be a host. But being a host should not be misinterpreted as you should always be nice to somebody, because you can also be a host by giving people honest, candid feedback. Yes, you have to be welcoming, you have to show the hospitality and whatnot, but if the guest is standing and jumping on your sofa, you also should say them, please get down, right? That's also about being a host. It's not about being kind and nice all the time and then you facing the brunt of everything that happens. So there is a nuance to how we define that being the host as our value. Embrace the adventure. And be a serial entrepreneur relates to the second quote that you see there at the bottom of the slide. It relates to us having an aspiration for being the world's largest startup. From 2008 to now, we are roughly about 5,000 employees around the world. But we still have the aspiration to be, that agile, be nimble, and, operate as a startup and not get into the trenches of a bureaucratic big organization. It's a very tough balance to maintain, but that's the aspiration that we always try to move towards. Now, there's again a very interesting story that I want to share. The reason why, if you actually notice, serial entrepreneur, the spelling is different, and that's very deliberate. Does anyone know what's the story behind? You can just say yes or no in the chat. If you know, I'm going to give you double points. Okay. So there's a story behind. Everything in Airbnb, there's a story behind. So the serial entrepreneur happened in 2010. I don't know how many of you at that time were closely following US politics. Obama was, 2008, sorry. Obama was campaigning, right, to be the president of the United States. And in San Francisco, there was a Democratic convention that was happening where he was going to come and do his election campaign and whatnot. So what the three friends did, the CEO and his two friends, what they did is they were actually running short of money. They didn't have money to run the company and they wanted to raise money. So they were meeting with so many investors and all of those people to ask for money and all of that, but they were so desperate for money. So what they did was they basically went to a retail shop and they bought, like in wholesale, they bought huge bags of cereal, and then they bought a cereal box, like an empty cereal box. They put all the cereal in the cereal box, and they actually sold cereal in the Democratic Convention when people were, and the cereal had a picture of Obama, right? And it said Obama licious or something like that, like delicious. They made a word out of it, and they had like a cartoon of Obama, and became like a thing during the campaign where all Obama supporters started to buy the box of cereal, and each cereal was like $5 or something like that, right? And they, through that, they were able to raise $20,000 in the convention, which they actually used it for the company. So what this really brings us to life is, how can you actually be creative in finding solutions to a problem? And that's really where the serial entrepreneur comes. There, as a company, we encourage people to get into creative problem solving, and that behavior of creative problem solving is incentivized. So that's the little bit of a story behind being a serial entrepreneur.
That's really great. Thank you so much for sharing the fascinating journey of Airbnb with us. It's really inspiring to hear about like how three friends transformed a simple idea into a global phenomenon. It's clear that Airbnb's success is not just about the business, but also the people, culture, and leadership that drives it forward. So by prioritizing these elements, Airbnb has not only created a thriving company, but also a community where creativity thrives. So, yes, every company has its own unique culture, which includes its values, norms, beliefs, and practices. Knowing the culture helps you determine whether you align with the company's values and whether your working styles fit well within the organization or not. So, let's move to the next slide, which talks about the culture at Airbnb. So, over to you, Madhu.
Sure. So just a continuation from the last slide. So, culture is such a loaded term. It can mean so many different things. So what I've really tried to do with this slide is give a very precise picture of what aspects of culture are things that we hold near and dear to us. So the first thing that I would say is if you probably go Google Brian Chesky 7-star experience, you'll probably see him talking, giving interviews on this concept. So the 7-star experience, basically, all of us have heard 5-star experience, right? We often don't hear 7-star experience. So the intention of this is to really continuing to have the drive to go above and beyond, right? Just because 5-star is what everybody says, doesn't mean that should be the golden standard. Something else, something more should be a golden standard. So as a company, we strive to do that. We strive to have high aspirations and continue to move towards that. And in fact, another example of that, and I'll actually go to the direct bottom point in the slide, which is when it comes to even a high level of focus that we have on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have high standards. We have, as a company, we've declared that by 2025, we will be 50% male, female at every level in the organization. And in the US especially, we have a goal of being at least 20% underrepresented minorities at every level in the organization. These are, if you're following the DEI space, these are very ambitious targets for companies to have. Again, like I said, we aspire to be that company that has higher standards of working, and we give ourselves higher goals that if we don't hit the goal, so be it, we'll continue to aspire for it. But to have that high goal and aspire for it is something that's so embedded into our culture. The other thing, again, I'll take you to the top here, where it says hosts are treated as partners. I think I already covered that, so I'll skip that. But just to reiterate the fact that for us, hosts are not just part of our platform. They are the reason why we have a platform in the first place. So there is a lot of importance given to how we treat our host and the host communities. The next thing to call out is Airbnb is a very functionally aligned organization and also matrixed. What I mean by that is in in many organizations, you would see engineering and product sort of combined, and there's like a single leader who sort of manages both engineering and product end to end, as an example. But in our case, we have engineering separated from design. It's a very functionally aligned organization, and the reason why we have decided to be a functionally aligned organization is we want the best people to be doing the best job. So that means that we expect people to be deep experts in their domains, and we want them to be able to go deep. But the matrix organization is where comes in nuance, because when we end up making a decision that we have to be a functionally aligned organization, it can get very easy to operate in silos, right? Because you're just worried about only your function and you'll just do only your job. But the moment you say that you also have to be a matrixed organization, there is a constant need to keep, if you're swimming, right, you need to lift up your head and see once in a while where you're going and where you're heading in that direction. So that's what we actually mean, that yes, you have to be deep in your area of expertise, but you also should show the ability to sort of cross collaborate and bring things together. So that is, again, how we are structured as an organization, and we expect people to I think the best analogy I can give here is we expect people to be T-shaped leaders, right? If you look at the T shape, you're able to go deep, but you're also able to lift your head up and cross collaborate across different teams and different functions. The next one I would say is we are a relatively flat organization for 5,000 plus employees. So I think being this flat of an organization is what is ultimately enabling us to be a little nimble, be a little agile, and continue to be, that startup, so to say, for the size that we are in. And I would also say that it is this ability to be a flat organization that in fact helped us in 2020 to really navigate the macro conditions and quickly pivot to what we want to do. And eventually by the end of 2020, we ended up going IPO, which is not something that we ever expected, especially in a year when there was a global pandemic. Right now, again, this is a change that we've significantly pivoted to since the pandemic. The entire company works on a single roadmap. So we have releases 2 times a year. So everything that every team does is focused towards what's the next release all about, and how can every organization or every function in the organization support that particular roadmap. So the company works in a single roadmap. And as a result of that, there is a high focus on quality and operational excellence. We are, it's something that we give a lot of importance to. Hopefully you all got the sense of this, that people, culture, and leadership is really at the center of how we operate. In fact, if you want to learn a little bit about leadership, there are several articles that are there online. Some of the things that we are really known for is in 2020, when we had to lay off 25% of our workforce, the way we did it became like a playbook of how, layoffs are not the fun thing to do. It's always very hard for any company to do, but to actually do it in the most humane way possible. It's my personal opinion that I think Airbnb has the most perfect playbook to do layoffs in the most humane way possible, because the amount of care that we took to ensure that our employees are taken care of in a very dire situation as 2020 has served as an example for many other companies to actually do things in a similar way. So for us, people, culture, and leadership is at the center of how we operate.
That's really great. So these cultural elements paint a picture of dynamic and inclusive workplace that values collaboration, innovation, and a customer-centric mindset. So now that we know about what about Airbnb everything as an organization is, its culture and things. So let's come to what most of us are waiting to know here, like the hiring process at Airbnb. So can we move to the next slide, please? Yes. So in this slide, it's like the process which Madhumita will be sharing, and you guys can take a note of it. so that in future, if you want to apply for any of the designation, you can just go through it.
Yeah, none of this should be like, eye rolling for any of you. The process we follow is typically followed by many big tech companies, especially like the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Googles of the world. So starts with an application review. I will say that because we became a remote first company since 2020, obviously there are much more of the talent pool are very interested in working with Airbnb as opposed to many other tech companies. So on an average, every opening that we have in our careers page receives like 1,000 to 1,500 applicants at a minimum. So with that said, there is a difficulty to expect our recruiters to reach out to every 1,000 of those applicants and say, yes, you got through or you didn't get through, right? So it is definitely a challenge for us given the volume of applicants that we're receiving, but it does start with an application review where the recruiter reviews your resume with the hiring manager, which is then followed by a recruiter review. So the recruiter basically checks on what's your background, what are your career goals, how does your career goal fit with this role. So when you get that recruiter call, the one thing that I would say you should be thinking about is really thinking about what are your career goals and having a story around how those career goals align with this role and how this role is going to take you to that next step in your career goal. So think about how you can sort of connect those dots in that first conversation that you'll have with the recruiter. Once that is done, we typically for senior software engineers, there are like 2 coding and 1 architecture interview round. This will be for about 60 minutes. If you're like a staff engineer, which is typically something that we hire if you have about 12 plus years of experience, we have 1 coding interview, but also 1 or a code review, right? Depending on whether you're applying for a front-end role, back-end role, or an infrastructure role, it'll differ whether you're expected to code or whether you're actually review the code that's actually written by somebody else and sort of give recommendations on how it could be improved. And then there will be 2 architecture interview rounds. So if you actually see the ability to actually get involved in architecture is something that we expect from our engineers very early on. Of course, the complexity will differ from being of questions will differ for a senior software engineer to a staff software engineer. So if anything, I think I would say that if you're able to crack this round, you're like 60% there, right? In the entire process. Then we follow it up with a hiring manager, which will be an experience interview round. So this is where there are like behavioral interview questions that are often asked. So these are questions that mostly test these are questions that would assess your ability to show that you can cross collaborate. So that's a really important trait that we look at. Whether you're a software engineer, we still expect you to be able to work across teams, across product design, and work across teams. So your ability to cross collaborate is very important. Your ability to communicate clearly is very important. And your ability to sort of do root cause analysis and go deeper to understand what the problem is. That is very important. And the last thing that I would say is your ability to show initiative, like leadership, right? So these are like the 4 traits that are often sort of looked for in those behavioral interview questions. The more after this, right? Yes, you're sort of 90% done. The last 10% is what the core value interview is all about. But the core value interview is something that we take very seriously, because just because it's the last 10%, we don't give it any less weightage than the rest of the rounds, because we have had people who have like really done well in the technical interview rounds and all the interview rounds, but when we don't see the culture fit, we don't hire. So the core value is a very important round. So the core value is all about the 4 core values that you saw in the previous slide: champion the mission, be a host, be a serial entrepreneur. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting. I'm forgetting the other one. So those 4 core values are there are questions that are based on those 4 core values. So questions, for example, in this round might be, tell me about a time when you had to show your entrepreneurship skills, or tell me a time when you had to creatively problem solve, right? So it's important that you go back, familiarize yourself with what those core values are, and the stories that you share, which of course should not be made up stories. It should be your life stories, are based on those core values. So what we really try to do with the core value interview is to understand you more as a person. So far we've understood you for your skills, for your capabilities. This round is all about how can we know you better as a person. So that's how the rounds go before an offer is given, and background checks, and the usual things that happen.
Great. So thank you so much for sharing a glimpse of what the interview process at Airbnb looks like and what to expect. So moving on, we have this slide. So a lot of candidates like complain that there are jobs out there, but actually finding one and getting hired is not that easy.
Yeah.
So it's a mountain of a process. So could you, from your rich experience and things, can you throw some light on how we can go about the process and things and how we can get a good remote?
Yeah, I, uh, I'm smiling because getting hired is a difficult job. In fact, after you get the job and you start doing the job, that's the easier part. So hiring and getting hired, I would say, is definitely more of an art than a science, and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, to be very honest with you all. It is hard to say exactly why you didn't get a job, or sometimes exactly why you got the job. But it begins with a certain level of self-awareness, right? The self-awareness starts with, what is it that I truly lack? That what are my strengths, what are my weakness? And you all have to be, each of you have to be absolutely true to yourself to say, these are the skills, these are the capabilities that I'm not good at, I need to build, and these are my strengths. Because if you end up lying to yourself there, I think you've got the entire process wrong, right? So it actually begins with that self-awareness of doing that strength versus improvement areas for yourself. Because once you clearly lay that down, then you know exactly in your improvement areas what you need to go work on. If it's communication, then you go practice your communication and come back. There is no point in continuing to pursue and apply for jobs when you haven't solved for your development or your improvement areas. So it's absolutely important to invest in your improvement areas, because the more you improve your weaker areas, that much you're increasing your chance of actually making it to at least the first few levels of interview. So with that said, the second thing, I'm sure you all have heard this a gazillion times from a gazillion people: networking. It's so important, but networking is also an art than a science. So it's important to understand with networking that you don't come across as someone who is just networking with someone because you want a job, because that is very, very transactional. Networking is not about just knowing number of people. It's about the quality of relationships that you can maintain. So it's, imagine every day you have 100 people coming to you and saying, I want a job, I want a job, I want a job. How would that make you feel, right? At some time you will be very frustrated and say, okay, just don't come to me, right? Because people are coming to you with a very transactional requirement. They want something from you. So they are valuing that want more than you. And no, none of us like that feeling, right? We want to be valued as a person. So when you network, it's very important that you just don't reach out to somebody and say, I'm applying for a job, can you get me a job? And trust me, you will not get a response, right? So think about how you can also give something to that networking relationship, rather than always trying to take, because it is a two-way street. So I would say these are probably two very basic things to do to at least improve the chances of finding a job that you like. So with that said, now let's assume that you got the remote job, right? What do you do to be successful in that remote job? I have called out here four, there are so many things that so many people can call out, but I've called out four very important things, because these are four important things that you also have to show even during your interview. The first thing I would say is trustworthiness. So in trustworthiness, if we can go to the next slide, I don't know how many of you have seen this trust equation. So it's a very popular concept. So when you're thinking about building trust with someone, it is a combination of you coming across as someone who's credible, which means that you know your area, you have expertise in that area, whether it's coding, whether it's finance, whether it's HR, whatever it is, you know that area, right? So bringing credibility. The second thing is, how do you come across as someone who's reliable? So can people rely on you and say that, okay, if Madhu says she's going to do it, she's going to do it, right? So being a man or a woman or a person of your word is what is reliability all about. The third thing is intimacy. Intimacy is really about valuing those relationships. That means that if I share something with you, are you able to keep it confidential? Are you someone that I can really trust and confide? Are you someone who actually values relationships? So that's intimacy. And then at the denominator, it's about self-orientation. Self-orientation means you just put yourself first, right? You only think of yourself, and the rest of the others' needs, comes only secondary or doesn't matter to you. So now mathematically, if you look at this equation, the more self-oriented you are, the lesser trust you build. So trust is, when you're looking to build trust, it is about how much are you able to act in the service of others. So essentially, to increase trust, what you should be thinking about is maximizing your credibility, reliability, and intimacy, and you should be minimizing your self-orientation, because mathematically, if you do that, that's when you are able to improve trust. So the reason I'm sharing this is the trust equation is a concept that we use in Airbnb very frequently. It's not an Airbnb concept. It's out there, but the language of trust equation is something that we use in Airbnb, and it's a really good concept to keep in mind as you're thinking about how to build trust with your stakeholders, with your manager, with your team members. It can apply in any context. So going back to the slide, the second attribute you want to think about is, are you independent in doing your work? Because especially in a remote setup, your manager is going to be somewhere, your team members are going to be somewhere. So if a work is given to you, how independent are you to just take that body of work and run with it? But that does not mean that you are just siloed and you're just looking at your work. You also should, like I mentioned before, show the ability to collaborate with people. When you're stuck, ask the right questions, find the right people, ask the right questions, get the right information, then move on, right? So thinking about how you can bring collaboration into that mix. Communication is extremely important, again, because everybody is remote. So your return communication is very, very, very important, because you're going to be use Slack or Messenger or whatever it is. So if return communication is your biggest weak area, trust me, in a remote job, that is extremely important, and you have to start working there. The last thing I would say is flexibility. I say flexibility because just because you're in a remote setup, it doesn't mean that we all can come in and say, in my time zone, it's only 9 to 5. I'm not going to work beyond. It is about how do you enable the team. So if there are, I work across time zones. So if there are days where I'll have to work late in the night, early in the morning, because I have another team member who's in a different time zone, so be it, right? To get the job done, how can you be flexible? That doesn't mean that you can't have your guardrails, right? You also have to have your life to move on. So it's about maintaining that fine balance. So so with that said, I will say, when you're writing a cover letter or something, don't over-index on, oh, I'm applying for this job because you guys are remote. That doesn't sit well, right? Remote is just an added flavor, What you should really be focusing on is what are the aspects of the role that you like and how do you see yourself fit to do that role effectively. So in all of this, I would also say, always be prepared to ask intelligent questions, because it's not just the companies trying to assess you in a hiring process. You're also assessing the company to make sure that they are a good fit for you as well. So remember to ask intelligent questions in the interview process.
Great. So, thank you so much, Madhumita. That's a lot of information and some real gem of career advice for the job seekers here. I'm sure our audience would find the information very helpful in their career journey. That's the end of our presentation, and now we can open the floor for Q&A. We already have some questions from the audience. Others, please type in the questions in the chat box. We'll try to pick, because we have less time, so we'll try to pick the best questions out here. Fine. So let's start with this question, which is, yes, what tools or technologies have been instrumental in facilitating remote collaboration and project management, according to you?
Well, it's project management. I know many companies now use tools like Asana, which is helpful in prioritizing, team prioritization, project prioritization. We at least in Airbnb, we mostly use Asana, which is like something that's widely prevalent across our teams. I know there are some Microsoft project tools that I've been used to using before my time in Airbnb, but we don't use that much. What other project management tools? We used to use Jira, but I think we are more and more shifting towards cloud-based project management tools. So in the last couple of years, Asana is what we've been using for project management.
Great. Thanks for answering that. So we have another question. It says, what should be the best answer to the question, why do you want to work remotely?
That's a good question. So if that question comes to me, what I would say is, and this has to, for each of you, this will differ, right? Because each of us you have to bring your genuine self when you're actually answering these kind of questions. So if this question is posed to me, I would say remote working gives me the flexibility to do justice to both my work and life, without compromising one for the other. And I'm someone who believes that one is not more important than the other. There has to be a fine balance. So remote work gives me the flexibility to focus on work when work needs me the most, but focus on my life and my family and my personal life when that takes more importance. So it empowers me to decide which is more important for me at that particular time. That's what I would say. But you all need to think about what that means for you. There's no one right answer here.
Right. Totally agree with you. So, what tools do you at Airbnb use to measure developers' productivity?
We mostly rely on GitHub. GitHub is also what we use for our code reviews. What else for developer productivity? We've now started using Microsoft Copilot since all the Chat GPT buzz and all of that. So, but we also use Copilot very carefully, because we don't want to give too much information to Copilot, because then the data sits with Microsoft and all of that. But to determine how it's helping our developers be more productive, we use Copilot, but there is a little bit of an element of self-report as well. Developers also themselves say, okay, how quickly they've been able to finish this particular code, now versus 12 months ago. So there's a little bit of self-reporting. One could argue how accurate that is, but we don't have developer productivity as a metric, right? So we are not too bothered about how accurate it is. It's just to get a pulse check of how these tools are helping our developers be more productive.
Okay, thanks for answering that. We have another question, which is there any restrictions at Airbnb's for Airbnb's employees for the personal investment? Like I work at KPMG, they have their restrictions. So
Personal development. I'm going
no
to
personal
assume you.
investment.
Oh, like financial investment.
Yes, yes.
I'm not too sure about how to answer that. We have part of our benefits, we do offer financial advisors who can advise you on, if you have an investment, you could actually set up, calls with them and understand about your financial portfolio and where you can invest and all of that. But I don't think I fully understand what that question fully entails. Personal investment. Sorry,
No
I'm not
worries,
able
we
to
can. No worries, we
give a
can
full
skip the
answer there.
question. So, I have a question, which is like, in most of the companies consider the candidate according to their, experience. If they don't have the relevant degree, then also they try to take them on the basis of their experience. So, is it same with Airbnb, or it prioritize degree or proper specialization most?
It's a good question. So, we have different kind of programs. At least in the US, we don't have this in India, but in the US, we have a program called the Connect program, where we exclusively look for people coming into tech from very non-traditional backgrounds, right? But that is a program that we started a couple of years ago, but it's still restricted only within the US. But outside of that program, we let's say we are hiring you for a software engineer role, which is kind of our entry level position, then we do look for the credibility of an engineering degree. But let's say you're applying for a staff engineer role and you've already had enough experience to show that you can do the job, then we don't index so much on your education. So it depends on the level, right? Because when we're hiring for a software engineer role, you also don't have an experience, so we have to anchor on something to make sure that you're a credible hire for us. So that time we lean more towards education, but the senior up you go, it's more of your experience and your impact that holds more weightage than your degree per se.
Great. So let's pick the last question for today, which is there are so many remote working sites today, and it can get overwhelming for someone who is trying to search quality remote work. How does one navigate this and go about finding legitimate remote work?
I know it's a tough one. One basic thing that I will say is, if you look at a job and you sort of like read through the job description and you like it, actually go to the company's career site to actually make sure that it's the same job that you see, right? Because mostly, you can be assured that 90% of the times what you see in the actual company's career site is a lot more legitimate than what you will see in random sites that basically pull the API from companies and they just make a list of all the jobs. So that's one way to check whether the job that you're applying for is legitimate or not. The other way to check would be, you could also look at LinkedIn, because recruiters who are able to post in LinkedIn, they actually have to buy like their recruiter package or whatnot, right? So that means that those are companies that are willing to invest in the right kind of a service to actually get their jobs out. So LinkedIn is another place where you could go back and check, is it the same job? Is it the same description? Are they reading to be same? Because sometimes what would happen is LinkedIn will have a job description, but the same job, it'll have the same title, same company and all that. But then when you go to a random remote job site, the job description would be a little different. They would have tweaked something. So that can give you an indication that, it's not the same. And I would probably lean more towards trusting LinkedIn than, a random remote job site.
Great. Thank you so much. With that, let's end the session here. And for the people who have typed some questions in the chat box, we will definitely share our Discord link with Madhumita, and I hope she joins that. And you can put in your questions over there, and she can reply according to her availability. So yes, with that, thank you so much, Madhumita. Your insight have been invaluable, and we want to express our sincere gratitude for you sharing your time to contribute to the growth of our community. We truly appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much.
Of course. No, I enjoyed being part of this. Thank you so much for engaging.
Yes. So for our joiners, we have some upcoming steps, and we'll be communicating all the details with you through WhatsApp and social media. You'll get the recordings and things on WhatsApp and on social media. So you just have a track of it. And to participate in future insightful sessions, be sure to register on Uplers. Our website features numerous job roles posted by various companies. Explore the opportunities which suits best for you, and stay tuned for updates. We have shared Discord link in the chat box, so you can join our community. You'll get access of a lot of things, and we eagerly anticipate hosting more such sessions and reconnecting with you all in near future. A big thanks for you to joining this session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Lovely meeting you all.